I'm still very much on this journey. So if you're looking for a person, a coach, a leadership coach, an EQ coach, an executive coach that is perfect in leadership and perfect in EQ and has the ultimate self-awareness and social awareness and is God's gift to life and leadership and emotions and all this stuff, I am not your guy. I'm not your guy. That has no issues, no challenges, I am definitely not your guy. I am still very much actively working on all these areas. Do I have the corner market on leadership figured out? Are you joking me? Man, every day I'm got new insight. I'm like, man, I got to work on this. I got to work on that. Same thing with my EQ. Same thing with my parenting. Same thing with my relationship. Same thing with my like. I'm still very intentional on this journey. Welcome to the EQ Gangster podcast, where you will learn practical tools to grow your mental and emotional health and intelligence to be the best version of yourself, both at work and at home. It is real, raw, and transformational. The journey of emotional growth isn't easy, but it's worth it. I believe in you. What is going on, EQ Gangster? So I just had a buddy of mine. So this is going to be about vulnerability. To be vulnerable or to not be vulnerable? That is the question for you. It's not for me though, because I'm vulnerable, dude, and that's just how I roll. And there's going to be some people that are not. They're not going to dig it, and that's fine. So anyway, here's some context. So I have had a concern over the years. I've been doing executive coaching in the area of emotional intelligence for 4 years now. And I've been podcasting for 4 years. I started my executive coaching EQ emphasis. I've been coaching leaders for a long time, 20 some years, but in the EQ space specifically the past 4 years. And I started the podcast almost the same month. No. Yeah. I started my executive coaching in January. I started my podcast in February. So of 4 years ago. And one of my concerns was in sharing all these lessons and stories and stuff like that of very personal failures and shortcomings and issues and dysfunctions and et cetera, that my coaching clients or potential coaching clients would be like, dude, you are way too jacked up to work with any of our executives or whatever. And we want the perfect guy or lady who, has the PhD in behavioral psychology from Harvard and has no issues, which, and that's a real concern that I've had the entire 4 years. And I will tell you, it's actually been my experience. Now I know it's anecdotal because it's just me. I have no idea what the research is out there. But I will tell you, every single client that I've got, I had the same sales pitch. I literally told them, because one of them, $1 billion company, I remember this one like it was yesterday. The president of the $1 billion company was on, and the COO was on, and the head leadership guy was on. And so they basically asked, after I kind of shared my initial kind of overview and stuff, hey, what education do you have in this area? And I said, oh man, I don't want to intimidate you or make you feel uncomfortable when I share the level of education that I have in these areas, my multiple PhDs. And they kind of sat back, like kind of looked at each other like, oh crap, this guy, he's educated. I said, oh man. I said, so I've got a PhD in emotional neediness, a PhD in people-pleasing addiction, a PhD in toxic positivity, a PhD in emotional codependency. When do you want me to stop? they started laughing. They look at each other, oh man, that's great. I said, look, and this is my line. If you are looking for the PhD in behavioral psychology from Harvard, I am not your guy. don't hire me. I still have issues that I am actively working on. If you're looking for the eighth degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that doesn't remember the last time they got submitted, I'm not your guy. If you are looking for the guy who has been actively daily on the emotional mats, jiu-jitsu mats, every single day for the past 4 to 5 years, for hours a day, still getting tapped out, still getting submitted, then I am your guy. Because I have learned a truckload of lessons of applying this stuff in my own life from my own jiu-jitsu roles, right, so to speak, every day, as I'm using that as an example. I have collected and accumulated a truckload of EQ exercises and moves and techniques that help me roll better when I'm on the mats of life, both personally and professionally, both at work and at home. And those are the lessons that I share with the executives, the leaders, the entrepreneurs that I'm working with, civilian, military, whatever, that I'm working with. Those lessons. I don't share lessons that don't work in my life. It doesn't. I mean, sometimes I do. Hey, like if I pick up a lesson that, hey, I got this lesson from somebody else. Now it doesn't work for me, but it worked for Frank or Susie or Bob. See if it may work for you. So but my point is, I'm still very much on this journey. So if you're looking for a person, a coach, a leadership coach, an EQ coach, an executive coach that is perfect in leadership and perfect in EQ and has the ultimate self-awareness and social awareness and is God's gift to life and leadership and emotions and all this stuff, I am not your guy. I'm not your guy. That has no issues, no challenges, I am definitely not your guy. I am still very much actively working on all these areas. Do I have the corner market on leadership figured out? Are you joking me? Man, every day I'm got new insight. I'm like, man, I got to work on this. I got to work on that. Same thing with my EQ. Same thing with my parenting. Same thing with my relationship. Same thing with I'm still very intentional on this journey. Now, that level of intention, I will tell you, as someone who rolls every single day, again, I'm just using that analogy, in my relationships, in my emotional intelligence, in my leadership stuff, I have picked up a truckload of insights and nuances and lessons, practical application tools and exercises that for me have been absolutely invaluable, priceless. A lot of y'all know I just put it on the podcast. I've got it's a 3-part series, but it's not labeled 1, 2, and 3. So you unfortunately I'm not that dialed in yet, organized way. You guys probably just heard one of my recent episodes. It's called Lessons from the Lurch. That's how I roll. Very vulnerable and transparent. And ironically enough, I've had multiple people, 5, 10 people. One guy just hit me up today about those episodes. It's like, dude, he's like that because he's in a very type A industry. He's actually in a couple of different very type A industries. He's like, everybody likes to play hard, but the reality is nobody is as hard as they like to think that they are. Everybody has got stuff to work on that they struggle with, but everyone pretends like they don't have anything to struggle with. Now, again, he's talking from his space. Again, very type A space that he's in. He's like, So hearing from you and your vulnerability, he's like, dude, how many people have the intestinal fortitude to put themselves out there like that? You normalize struggle. You make it normal to like, oh, okay, like, oh, you mean you're gonna get tired when you do jujitsu? Oh, you mean you're gonna sweat when you do jujitsu? Wait, you mean you're gonna actually get tapped out? You mean you're gonna for years, even when you get to become higher belts? Guys, yes. So in a way, like I'm trying to normalize, like, why do we have to pretend that we all have our poop in a group? And anyway, I'm just not going to. And there are some people, again, I know that I am not going to be everyone's cup of tea. There may be, or not there may be, I know there are companies out there that, oh, no, 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 no. We do Noble. Whoa, 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 whoa. You're too vulnerable. You got too many issues. We want the, again, the PhD who just gives us all the research and the science and all that stuff, uh, and which is great. That's great. That's just, again, that's just not my deal. And so for me, and here's another thing too, just from a leadership standpoint, I will tell you, especially D's and C's, the dominance and the conscientious personality, the cholerics and the melancholies, the dominance and the conscientious, the D's and C's. That's using the DISC model. Personality model, the dominant personality and the conscientious personality specifically are not fans of sharing vulnerability. Now, listen, here's my disclaimer. Am I saying anybody has to be as vulnerable as me? Absolutely not. Everything's got context and perspective here. Understand my perspective. I am being ultra vulnerable because I have a podcast and a YouTube channel, and I am trying to reach people that are struggling, that sometimes feel hopeless and helpless, that need to know that struggling is, in my opinion, is part of the human experience. Now, maybe some of you leaders are at a point where you don't struggle anymore, which I would be shocked to come across some of folks like that, the unicorns. But I think more people struggle than don't, in my opinion. And I want to normalize talking about it. There's some areas that are taboo to talk about, and I think that perpetuates the problem. If I can't ask you how to avoid getting armbarred, how long is it going to take me to learn how to get out of an armbar if I can't talk about it? How do I get out of a rear naked choke? If I can't talk about or ask questions to somebody who's a higher belt than me, or maybe the same lower belt than me, who's better at getting out of rear naked chokes than I am, how am I ever going to, it's going to take me forever to learn and grow to how to not be rear naked choked. So that for me, so again, context, I am in a position where I have a platform and I want to normalize struggle because I think struggle and valleys and challenges are part of the human experience. And especially guys my generation and older are very uncomfortable talking about this stuff. And for me, it's like, why? Dude, like everyone sees you getting choked out every day. You're getting rear naked choked every day by the same coworker or by the same boss or by the same position or project that you're working on. Why do we have to pretend like it's not happening? Because we're all seeing you get put to sleep. We're all seeing you tap out. Like, why? Let's talk about it. Let's figure out how to grow and heal and change and improve from our issues, right? Anyway, that's my perspective. So does anyone, again, have to be as vulnerable as me, as a leader, as a parent, no, you don't. That being said, I absolutely believe that vulnerability is a powerful, powerful tool in establishing trust and rapport and connection with people, regardless of the scenario, professionally or personally, professionally and personally. Vulnerability is an incredibly powerful tool in connection and leadership and influencing and growth and esprit de corps and unity and all these powerful things as part of being a part of a team. Patrick Lencioni, Five Dysfunctions of a Team. The number one foundational tool that he talks about is not just trust. Trust is the bottom rung of his leadership pyramid thing on the 5 behaviors of a cohesive team, but specifically his nuance to that trust, to the type of trust that is the most powerful in creating 5 behaviors of a cohesive team, is vulnerability-based trust. Vulnerability-based trust. And again, D's and C's, dominance and conscientiousness, are the least comfortable with vulnerability. Now, here's what I recommend to leaders. So I recommend and encourage, strongly encourage, everybody as part of your leadership repertoire, as part of who you are repertoire, demonstrates a degree of vulnerability in all your relationships. Now, the degree to which you are vulnerable is completely up to you. You're in control of that. On a scale from 1 to 10, if you want to be a 1, that's fine. Now, here's some things to think about. This is great. One of my old business coaches back in the days, he wasn't vulnerable at all. I knew him for 10 years. He was not vulnerable at all. And he thought, oh my gosh, I'm so, I'm vulnerable. I'm like, dude, no. And I knew his leadership team as good as he did. And I would say in some cases more than he did. And I told him, I said, look, I got it. You're a super hardcore private guy. Got it. No sweat. You don't have to be vulnerable, but I'm just telling you, there are consequences for you not being vulnerable. I said, just so you know, me, along with all your other leaders that are your direct reports, none of us feel close to you, just so you know. We feel as close to you as the new guy that you just hired last week. That's how close we feel. Oh no, man, all my direct reports feel close to me. I'm like, okay, that's not what they've told me. And if they say that they feel close to you, just so you know, they're lying to you. Dude, none of us feel close to you. So I told him, I said, look, so going forward, just so you know, I will be as vulnerable with you as you are with me. So if you can picture a soldier, fully kitted up soldier in your mind. Okay, I said, look, if you take your helmet off, I'll take my helmet off. If you take your Ranger body armor off, I'll take my Ranger body armor off. If you put your weapon down, I'll put my weapon down. You take your boots off, I'll take my boots off. If you don't take any gear off, I'm wondering, maybe there's a reason that he doesn't feel safe for taking his gear off. I'm not taking my gear off. I'm going to stay in full combat, be sitting in your house, in your living room. You're sitting on the sofa. I'm sitting in the sofa or couch across the living room. He's still in his full gear battle rattle. I'm going to stay in my full gear battle rattle emotionally. And so he's like, oh man, I just didn't realize. I'm like, dude, I'm not even telling you to change. You don't have to change. I'm just telling you there's consequences for you keeping your emotional walls up and not letting anybody in your life. They're just consequences. If you want your business, your company to be 100% transactional, you can keep it transactional. That's totally fine. Totally fine. There are consequences. There are consequences. So how much loyalty, teamwork, esprit de corps, unity, buy-in will you get from creating a completely transactional relationship and team and organization? There's consequences, right? So and now here's the thing. On my side, there are consequences for being insanely crazy vulnerable. Now, would I be as vulnerable to my business team as I am on a podcast? Maybe, maybe not. Again, I feel like I've learned how to lead with the degree of vulnerability. And if that means that some people, because C's are the what, C's and DC's and CD's have the highest expectations for others. So there are some C's that like, oh man, Noble has he has 27.2% more struggles and issues than I do. Therefore, I am not going to listen to him. There are some people that are like that, that they don't think other people should struggle or they should struggle less than they do, or the struggle should look different than whatever the thing is. Again, I understand that I am not everyone's cup of tea. For me, as an influencer personality, the dominant influencer, steady conscientious of the influencer personality, I I I cannot lead transactionally. I am incapable of leading transactionally. I have to lead through relationships. That's just how I'm wired. It's how God made me. So for me, I can make it work. Knowing just like there's consequences for creating a totally transactional environment, there's also consequences for creating a totally super transparent, super vulnerable environment. And for me, I walk. I know it's a line that I walk. There are some things that I don't talk about, but for me, that's a very small percentage of things versus a C or a D. We have different scales. Find your scale that you're comfortable with. Again, and there's a line, but on both sides, right? There's a line of not vulnerable enough. There's a line of too vulnerable. Figure out where is a safe, comfortable level that you are that for you that you're comfortable with, and then also ask questions. Ask your organization. So if you're a leader or an executive, dip your toe in the water of vulnerability and say, hey, you know, like here's this is I'll give you a perfect example. This is fire. Colonel Ricky Taylor, he was a recent episode, did an Arrowhead leadership consulting lunch and learn with Arrowhead, and Ricky Taylor was the guy interviewed as a brigade commander in the 82nd Airborne Division. And he said he didn't say the word vulnerability, but he talked about being vulnerable. And one of the things he shared is, because I asked him, well, how can one be effectively vulnerable? And it was so powerful. He said, share what you're struggling with or you're still working on. Because 9 times out of 10, your team, your people already knows. So to pretend like you're not struggling with something that they know you're struggling with can feel very disingenuous and very inauthentic. And you're missing an opportunity to connect and deepen your relationship with your team. Share your struggle. Share and maybe how you've worked on it, what you're doing to work on it, what you've struggled with, and what you did to overcome that particular struggle. Sharing struggle and how you're working on it, in my opinion, is a great kind of litmus test of vulnerability. And again, you can pick. You're in control. You're in total control of what you share, what you don't share, but just realize that degrees of vulnerability has direct consequences and impact on the team, family, organization that you are leading and influencing. How do you feel about vulnerability? How easy is it for you to be vulnerable? Is it easy? Is it hard? How could you be more effective and strategic at being vulnerable to dial up or down the levels of closeness and connection with your family and or team or organization? Thank you for being on this journey together. Your best version is worth healing and growing emotionally, mentally, for you, for your family, your children, your coworkers, your colleagues, your organizations that you're leading and a part of. Thank you for rating, reviewing, subscribing, sharing this episode or another episode that hopefully impacts you in a powerful, effective way.